The next episode of Nerd, Flicks, and Chill will start in
3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, this is Nick,
This is Carrie.
and we are Nerd Flicks and Chill, and today we are talking about Star Trek Beyond. We're going to give you our review of the film and tell you whether or not you should screen it, stream it, or leave it.
Yeah.
That is our grading that we do here on our show.
Yeah, I think it's pretty witty. I think it kind of speaks to viewing habits nowadays. Are you gonna go out to the theater and see it? You're gonna stay at home and watch it, or are you just gonna pass it up altogether and I don't know, maybe wait for it to pop up on cable when there's nothing else to watch?
And as always, we would invite you to reach out to us on Facebook and Twitter at NerdFlixChill and let us know your thoughts on the movie. Also, if you are subscribing or listening via iTunes, it's always a good idea to go in and leave us a nice little review. We do love those 5-star reviews and appreciate them when we get them. So if you are enjoying what we're putting out, go ahead and leave us a review.
And it's not just our enjoyment either. It helps the show be seen by more people or be heard by more people. It allows it to be able to show up in searches better. So we really want to grow this show and we need your help to do it. And all it takes is a click, a couple stars. That's all we're asking.
And don't forget to tell your friends, too. If you have other nerdy friends who would be interested in the different things that we're talking about, let them know, because we want to build a little community here of nerdy people who like nerdy things, like Star Trek and Star Wars. And Game of Thrones.
So let's jump right on into it.
Okay, so Star Trek Beyond, directed by Justin Lin,
What other
with
things
Chris
has-
Pine, Zach Quinto.
What other things has he done, Justin Lin?
What other things has Justin Lin directed? Well, he has directed the a couple of the different Fast and the Furious movies. I think he did Fast and Furious and then Fast and Furious 6. He also did a couple of episodes of True Detective. I want to say that was season 2 of True Detective that he did. Did a couple of other smaller films. Oh, he also did Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. My God, he did a lot of those movies.
Yeah, I think that kind of explains some of my criticisms of this movie, which we will get into.
Okay, cool. So let's do kind of a spoiler-free brief review before we get into the nitty-gritty of what we liked and what we didn't like.
Okay.
And I will let you begin. So, the big question: should our listeners screen it, stream it, or leave it?
I'm going to give this one a screen it. If anything, because this is one of those big event movies where you want to go and see the effects, you want to be immersed in this film, the effects are beautiful. Even more so than the big digital effects are the makeup effects. To me, that's what stood out in this film. The makeups on these characters are fantastic. And I think to really appreciate that, it's awesome to see it on the big screen. The sound and everything in this movie is fantastic as well. And I think all of that is best appreciated at the theater. That's my short review.
Okay. I too am going to say screen this movie. I found this to be a very pleasant surprise. It wound up being much better than I was expecting it to be. This movie is fun. This movie is contained in a way that makes it feel like it is more rooted in the original kind of Star Trek mythology than any of the other films that have come before it. I have a couple of glaring criticisms of it that we'll get into in a little bit, but I thought the script is light, it's fun, it never really goes off the rails at any point, and like you said, the makeup effects in this movie are absolutely terrific, and it's the kind of thing that we need to support in theaters if we want to see more of it. So I am definitely on board with this. I say screen it. I say this is one of the more enjoyable films of a pretty lackluster summer, if we're being honest.
I agree. I completely agree. And now you and I have not talked about this at all. I quite literally just walked in the door from seeing it, and we have set it up and started to record. So everything that we are discussing right now is has not been pre-discussed. So I have no idea what your criticisms are, and I'm really curious to know if you have the same ideas that I do.
Okay. Well, let's get into some of the specifics of it. So we're gonna dip into spoiler territory here. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, it's a good time to pause your podcast right now and then come back to it after you've seen the movie if you want to hear some of our additional thoughts. So getting into some of the different spoiler aspects of it. Let's talk about the stuff we liked first before we get into the negative stuff, because I have a
Sure.
lot of stuff that I really liked about this movie. Um, First and foremost, I think the script in this movie works really well, and that's a credit to Simon Pegg.
I would agree. Yeah. I do have I do have a minor script thing, but that's minor. I think the movie to me kind of started very abruptly. You were just kind of already into it, and for the first, I don't know, maybe 20-30 minutes of the movie, I'm guessing, until the plot really started going, I was a little lost. Like, I didn't really know what was happening or where this place was that they were going. And then once the main plot of the movie kind of happened, that really didn't matter anymore. So maybe that's why they didn't really go into it at all. I did not want. I have seen the first two in this trilogy or in this series, but it's been a while, so I don't know if there was any lead in to suggest where it was that they were going. If it was just a continuation of the last movie, so I don't remember. So maybe it's my fault. But to me, the very beginning of the movie, I was a little lost for a little bit. But it might be viewer error.
So this would be a good one if any of you out there have seen Star Trek Into Darkness recently, because I'm going to do my best to try to remember. I haven't watched Into Darkness in a little bit of a while, but if I'm not mistaken, Into Darkness literally ends with Spock and Kirk talking about where they're going to go because they've been
Okay.
commissioned on like a 3-year mission. And I think the line is something like, you know, Kirk asks Spock where they should go, and Spock says something like, "I leave it to your good judgment," and it then just kind of fades out at that point. I think I'm not 100%. I
Yeah,
don't quite remember, but
I don't
um,
remember. I saw the last one like shortly after it came out, and I have not seen it again. And I didn't really retain a lot. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan. I mean, I enjoy the movies, so lots of the finer plot points get lost on me between movies, and it seems like, as you're saying, that this one really picked up where the last one left off. So that was viewer error on my part. I don't remember.
but I do think one of the great things about this movie is you do not need to have seen the first two films
No,
to
that's true.
really enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
And I did like, particularly when I was talking about some of the script stuff that I really liked. I really like the way we get that kind of opening bit of narration from Kirk's like captain's
Yeah.
log, where he's talking about, how it's hard to remain grounded when you're out in space and the gravity is artificial. I thought that was kind of really neat because it starts to kind of scratch the surface of the psychology of like what a deep space trip would be like. It doesn't ever get bogged down in that because, this isn't like this isn't kind of a think piece really, but I do like a little bit of thoughtfulness in my sci-fi fantasy, so I really did appreciate that. We get the idea that there are certain aspects in Kirk's life that are causing him to have a little bit of an identity crisis, maybe a little bit uncertain about the future that he wants. So there's some really good introspective stuff there in the beginning of the script, I thought.
No, I really did like that as well. It kind of gave him an awareness and a consciousness, and it's something that I don't think a lot of other, or even in the Star Trek series. Again, I could be viewer error. Maybe somebody did mention something like this. I don't know. But it seemed to touch on an awareness that I don't think they've addressed before at all. So no, I did enjoy that. Yeah.
And the other thing that I had also enjoyed about this too is this is the first of the Star Trek movies that I feel is Kirk's movie. Like this is Chris Pine's movie. He's the star of this movie. He doesn't really get upstaged by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
This is his film. This is his chance to really take the Kirk character and make it his own. He's the most entertaining character in this movie, which I think you could not have said in the previous two films. So this was kind of like him kind of assuming his rightful mantle as the lead in these films.
That's true. However, most of his cast, I thought they each were able to have their shining moments. Other than Sulu, really, there, everybody kind of had their own little sections. So it really did feel balanced. And yeah, he kind of was quite literally at the helm for, much of the movie, but I felt it was really good. It was really nice and kind of equally dispersed amongst the other crew members.
It's hard to keep all those plates spinning when you got so many people in the cast. I actually thought this was some of the best stuff that they've given Sulu of any of the three films. Seeing Anton Yelchin was kind of heartbreaking on screen because he did bring great life into Chekhov. I mean, that character wasn't really the best use of his talent, I don't think, of all the different stuff that he's done. But, I mean, it does just show you how likable he was, and what a shame it is that we're not going to ever see more stuff from him. It's just sad.
Well, on that same in that same line, I thought it was really nice how they kind of had this little memorial to Leonard Nimoy and the Ambassador Spock character in this movie. I thought that was really touching, and at the point where the current Spock is holding the picture, he opens up the little drawer and he takes out the picture of the classic Star Trek crew, and it focuses in on Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and that almost kind of got me a little choked up in that moment. I thought that was very sweet, and I really enjoyed that tribute to him.
That was a really great homage to Leonard Nimoy, of course, and it didn't feel like shoehorned in at all.
No.
Instead, it kind of introduced an interesting plot point, which is Spock knowing that he has died. His other self, his future self.
Yeah, it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel at like a last minute addition at all. It was very respectfully done. It was very well woven into the movie, and I don't know of a better tribute built into a movie than that. I thought it was wonderful, and like I said, it kind of got me a little choked up. And I'm not even a huge Star Trek fan, and I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I was not the world's biggest Star Trek fan. I did really like the Next Generation quite a bit. I thought they did a lot of cool stuff in there.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed these movies. And another character that I really enjoyed in this one is Bones.
Oh my gosh,
Carl Urban's excellent.
I love his portrayal of Bones so much. I love Carl Urban anyway. I practically fell in love with him from Lord of the Rings, so I'm a huge fan of his anyway, but I love his portrayal of Bones because it's so spot on, and it just teeters on that edge of being overacted. It's just a little too much, but he's able to do it so well that it's a wonderful toned down caricature, I guess. I mean, it's not a full-on caricature because that would be too much, but it's like he's just able to rein it in just perfection, and I love it anytime he's on screen. It's so good.
Yeah, I think he really, if anybody comes close to stealing the movie from Chris Pine, it's Carl Urban in this one. And I like the dynamic of Bones and Spock together. I thought they had some great comedic moments as they're kind of out there. This is one of those movies where it's kind of that classic, split the cast, and then a chunk of the movie is about them reuniting, and then they kind of have to band together at the end once they do reunite to defeat the villain. I mean, it's not something that from a format perspective is new, but it still works. And I think one of the interesting things about Justin Lin is if you look at the movies that he's made, particularly with those Fast and Furious movies, which I do not like, and I've made that abundantly clear. But what's interesting about it is that in those films, he focuses on this concept of kind of like the the untraditional like family, the people that are kind of not related to one another, but have found themselves forced into a situation together, and having like kind of a close knit group of characters.
Well, that's a perfect way to describe the dynamic with all of these characters, especially in this movie. So, I mean, I think that was kind of already built in. They already had that. So, I think that was one thing that lent him very well to this project. Another thing that I really, really enjoyed in the movie, again, talking about the makeup effects, I love, like, especially when you have like the Star Wars movies and they're at some kind of a cantina or something, and you're able to see all of the different types of species that exist in that universe. I loved being able to see more of the different types of organisms. I mean, even in the landscape of this planet that they were on. There's really cool insects and different things that we saw, and I love that atmospheric stuff that they added in there. But I loved when they were on Yorktown, I guess they were calling it. Just seeing some of the different inhabitants that were all there, kind of like their spaceport, and then also being able to see more of the crew and the different types of beings that are part of the crew. I love seeing that, and my gosh, all that makeup was just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, and so organic looking. Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of in the like classic style of movie monster makeups, and I really, really like seeing that. I really like seeing it a lot. I get, there are no real. I mean, there's a couple of CGI creatures in here, and that's fine. I mean, whatever. That's the way it's going to be. But when you see these actual characters that have these really cool prosthetic makeups on, it's awesome. I mean, that to me is like, I don't know. It's classic. It's very much in universe with regards to the Star Trek universe, and it's something that I wish we'd see more of. And there's a lot of talented people that went into doing the makeups on these movies. The makeup on Idris Elba, I think the character's name was Crawl.
Yeah.
That makeup is excellent, and it changes throughout the movie, which
does.
is really, really cool.
And even in his, I guess, ending transformation or ending form, oh my gosh, how flawless was that makeup on him. If there were any edges, I'm sure they would have, smoothed it out in any kind of CG or something, but it was like you didn't know where he ended and that makeup began. It was just, it looked so freaking fantastic. But yeah, there was really cool manipulation that they did with him and his character where they kind of tweaked it a little bit with some CG where he kind of moved a little bit. There was a part where he kind of was like glowing in little parts at one point that I thought was really, really neat. But then, you just mentioned some CG characters. Probably the one part of the movie that I really did not like was that very, very opening scene. Whereas, Captain Kirk and he was with those like bull looking creatures that were talking and he's trying to present this thing to them. To me, it felt very cartoonish and just very weird, and I guess maybe that was the point of it, because that was kind of the thing that happened, that he was in this situation and he was after that he was just like, okay, I'm done with this, I can't do this anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe that was a happy mistake, but that was kind of how I felt at that scene as well. It felt very kind of silly, and I'm glad that after that scene was done, it was like the integrity of the past movies were then upheld, because to me that just kind of removed me from everything. So I'm glad it didn't last for very long.
I also really liked the makeup on Jayla,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is a new character that we get, and hers is kind of a more traditional, like kind of like a tribal war paint makeup, but it looks terrific.
She looked so good. And I'm not sure who that actress is that played her, but I thought her portrayal was excellent as well. I really liked her character design. I liked how the makeup kind of went into her hair a little bit and how her hair had this shape where you could tell that the shape of her head was a little different. I thought she was excellent, and by the end of the movie, it looks like we will be seeing more of her. Should there be another Star Trek movie?
Yeah, the name of that actress is Sophia Boutella, and I think she was is fairly prominently known from that movie Kingsman.
Oh, okay. That's actually in my HBO queue. I have not watched it yet, and I've heard very good things
There
about
you
that
go.
movie.
So you'll see her again.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing her outside of that makeup to fully see her. But yeah, I thought that character was really cool, and I was just enamored with her anytime she was on screen.
Yeah, I thought she was great, and um, this is one of those stories where like I said before, you have they're all kind of separated and they get brought back together and they end up having to then go to battle with the main villain of the film. I also uh, one of the things I really liked, and I was debating on whether or not I liked this as I was seeing it because I feel like the movie kind of really hinges on um, the Beastie Boys scene
Yeah.
because I feel like you can look at that one of two ways. You could look at it and be like, well, this is some bullshit right here. Or you can look at it and say, that's kind of funny. And I opted to the funny side.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really think anything of it. I mean, in a lot of these Star Trek shows and movies, the way that they're able to get out of something just seems kind of silly. So, I mean, to me, it kind of fit, and I didn't really take it too incredibly seriously. So I just rolled along with it.
Well, this is like almost like, I don't know, call it 50s and well, more 60s era, like hippie kind of thing that was very much part of the Star Trek lore. I mean, if you think about it, if you had to sum it up in a sentence, it's like the uh, violent enemy is defeated with the power of music.
With radio waves. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't like the way they kept referring to it as classical music. I thought that was kind of a stupid joke. But, the fact that, they can mess up some waves with Beast Boys, I'm totally cool with that.
Well, we know too that J.J. Abrams is a huge fan of the Beastie Boys. He's had a way of being able to work in little homages to the Beastie Boys in almost every one of his projects. So even in Star Wars, he had little nods to the Beastie Boys. So that wasn't a surprise to me. But
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that look at that and they're going to be like, "Well, that was my least favorite thing in the movie." I didn't mind it at all. I mean, it's one of those things where the movie does not get too serious about itself, and I found that to be enjoyable.
yeah, I would agree.
So another thing that I'd come across in the couple days since I've seen the movie is how many Easter eggs there are in this film, and apparently there are a lot. Now, I want to reference a couple of them because it's always just kind of fun to look for. So right off the bat, one of them is Kirk talks about being 966 days into their 5-year mission. And apparently, Star Trek debuted in September of 1966. So 966, 966. Let's see what else we have. There was some stuff in here about. Oh, and Kirk just mentions too that everything is kind of starting to feel episodic
Yeah, that was funny.
when he talked about their mission, which was, I thought, kind of a neat thing in there too. Let's see. There's some other stuff too about like Kirk talking about his birthday. That happened in a different movie. I think it was in Star Trek 4, maybe. I don't remember. And there's a bunch of stuff that ties into the Star Trek series Enterprise, the Scott Bakula series, which I had never watched, but apparently there's a bunch of stuff in there that's referenced in here. We also have Sulu. Sulu is a gay character. We've had that introduced to us in this film, and there was some, I think, a little bit of back and forth between Simon Pegg and George Takei about that. Let me see if there was anything else in here that was interesting. I don't know. There's a lot of them that are in there, and the most obvious one being the references to Spock and the photo of the original cast is probably the best one. I did notice there is the Kelvin Easter egg that appears in every J.J. Abrams movie, and they called them.
Yeah.
I think the escape pods were called Kelvin pods in this movie.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, we had Greg uh, Grunberg. Is that his last name?
Yes, Greg Grunberg. Yeah.
Grunberg, thank you. I always love seeing him show up and everything. So it was nice to see him as well.
So here's one of the ones that's kind of interesting. All right, the name of the character Jayla. Do you know where that came from?
I do not.
All right, this is really silly, but apparently, according to Simon Pegg, when they were writing the character, they didn't have a name for it. So what inspired it was the character that Jennifer Lawrence played in Winter's Bone, and so they kept calling the character Jennifer Lawrence in Winter's Bone, and it was a pretty short jump between Jennifer Lawrence and J Law and Jayla.
All right. Interesting.
There you go. So
Sure.
yeah.
You never know when inspiration will strike.
Yeah, so there's a lot of those different Easter eggs that you can find when you're looking in there. You have like the "Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a whatever." The Bones always seems to throw out lots of different things in there. You can always look those up, but those were a couple of them that I thought were, I think, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I gotta say, I enjoyed the Michael Giacchino soundtrack again. He's another guy who just keeps putting out great soundtracks.
It was really good. I especially really liked the selection when they were entering into the Yorktown port. I thought that music kind of it reminded me of Epcot Center, where it was just kind of wondrous and had that space sound to it. I just really enjoyed that selection in particular. It really kind of stood out to me.
Yeah. I thought the music for these movies has been really, really good, and Michael Giacchino again. He's one of these guys who is gonna, be I think one of the go-to composers here, in the next several years. It's he's gonna be one of the big names. And then there are two other little Easter eggs. Did you catch the for Anton during the end credits?
Are you
The little
taking that?
homage to Anton.
You're including that? That's not an Easter egg.
All right. Okay. All right. So forget that one. Um,
Yeah, my definition of an Easter egg and that's why it's called an Easter egg because they're supposed to be hidden, and you have to find it. It's not something like that's right there in your face.
let's see. Another one too that's kind of neat is that because it's 50 years of Star Trek, they included 50 new species of alien for this movie.
Oh, I knew we were seeing more stuff, and I liked it. I didn't realize there was a specific meaning behind it. I like.
Yeah, and my favorite makeup in this movie comes at the very end of the film. It comes in one of the last couple shots where they're having that little like birthday party for Kirk,
Yeah.
and you see Chekhov talking to this alien.
Yeah.
The alien he's speaking to is this like, I mean, she looks like a sand crab almost. She has this like unbelievable like profile. It's like a big shell cowl that she's wearing.
Yeah, it had a nice spiral there, like in her like back of her head, like ear area. It was really cool.
Yeah, it is a stunning character. You can find pictures of it online. It is a gorgeous makeup that they did for that character. It's awesome, and that's my favorite in the movie, I think. I
Nice.
do really like the Idris Elba Krull makeup too. I think they're both great.
I also thought the one crew member that was holding the artifact or whatever in the back of her head, where her head kind of opened up, and it was almost like a reverse like face hugger from like
Yeah,
Aliens or something, but like her face I thought was just beautiful because she had all these little patterns and such within the different curves and shapes on her face. I thought she was just beautiful. I really liked her too.
yeah. Again, some great makeups in here. All right, so let's talk about some of the stuff that we did not like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to kick this one off because I think mine is probably a little bit more vague than yours.
Okay.
But my biggest criticism of the film is Justin Lin.
Yeah. I'm wondering,
And
I'm really curious though. I'm just like waiting for you to say the same thing that I'm thinking.
okay, so the this is a director that gets a little bit out of control sometimes, and what I
Uh-huh.
really can't stand
Uh-huh.
is some of like the shaky cam
Yes!
fight sequences
That's
where
mine too!
you've got 5 or 6 cuts happening in a
Yes!
series of like
Oh,
2 seconds, and you it's disorienting and you don't know what's happening. And then
yes.
they do that, and then they do this like pan out,
Ugh.
or they do like a zoom out, pan right, zoom in, and then
Yes.
like the awkward, clunky transitions. It's very disorienting and very frustrating.
Yes, that thank you. That is my exact thought. In fact, my stomach is still a little upset. As I said, I just got done watching the movie, so I'm just kind of coming down off of that. But yeah, that is my big thing. You're doing so much disservice having, except for disservicing your cameraman and your editors, but you're really doing a disservice to your actors and everybody that's done work on the set or whatever. When your camera is going in and out and all over the place, and it's jump cut, jump cut, jump cut, and so many weird angles that the camera was at, where it was just kind of askew a little bit, and then there were a lot of times where they had the camera like be kind of floaty, and I understand it when you're dealing with issues of gravity and it gives you that same feel, but there were times where we had gravity and we were on the ground, but yet why is the camera doing this weird floaty thing? And yeah, a lot of times it was incredibly disorienting, where it was an action sequence, but I had no idea what was happening or what was going on or what kind of stakes or peril were any of the actors or performers in this scene. And there were times where I had to look away. I had to look down and look away because I'm like, if I watch this, I'm gonna end up having to leave the theater and get sick because I'm really super sensitive to motion sickness like that, and it's a huge pet peeve of mine, and I understand it being used to show chaos and whatever, but it was excessive. It was really really excessive in this movie, and that's my glaring pet peeve as
Yeah, I
well.
mean, this to me, I don't understand it. I don't understand it because what's the point of having fight choreography if you're just gonna not show any of it anyway? If you're just gonna have this kind of like whirling dervish of action that the viewer cannot understand, what's the point of even, you know, what's the point of even choreographing a fight scene? I like now, like from what you're saying, I would refer to a specific episode of Game of Thrones that we talked about earlier this season, where the waif is chasing Arya through the street, and every time you see the waif, the camera is steady, and every time you see Arya, the camera cuts to her. It's kind of a shaky shot because she's injured and she's having a hard time. She's a little bit frantic. That makes sense to me. This doesn't. This is just, it's just a fist, a leg, a body. You can't tell who's what. You can't tell what's happening. It's disorienting. It doesn't serve the actors. It doesn't serve anything in the scene. It's one of the things that I wish would stop in films because it's completely disorienting to the viewer, and it's a totally insecure move by a filmmaker.
I agree.
As much as I like this movie, I'm not sold on Justin Lin as a director in any way, shape, or form.
No, and as soon as you said he did the Fast and the Furious movies, I was like, okay, it makes sense then. Because, yeah, I'm not incredibly familiar with those movies at all, but from what I've seen, that seems to be his regular MO.
I do think they did give him a chance to at least get some vehicle action in there with Chris Pine riding a motorcycle.
Sure.
Another criticism that I would have of this film is I felt like Idris Elba's character was underserved a little bit, maybe a little bit underwritten.
Well, I thought it was kind of interesting. After all was said and done, if you really think about it, he was kind of like an intergalactic vampire.
Yeah,
It was kind of like an interesting way to a creative way of looking at, or a futuristic way of looking at a vampire, because he was quite literally feeding off of the life force of other people, and he was, I guess that's why he was luring other ships and whatever to come there, because it was giving them everlasting life, and it was kind of giving them a different look. So to me, it was a classic, it was a futuristic look at a classic character. So we had it was
sure.
basically a space vampire movie.
Sure. I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more from him. Like, the overall plan to like destroy the Federation and stuff. To me, that was the part that felt a little bit shoehorned in. It almost felt like they were saying, "Well, we need to raise the stakes a little bit, so let's have him do this." And that to me didn't go over as well as I would have liked it to.
Yeah, it was a little shallow, and I think that, I don't know, I want to say that maybe there was some more development with him, that I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, probably just ended up on the cutting room floor for whatever reason. Because I know Simon Pegg as a writer, and he really seems to really excel at giving you great character moments and character development. So I want to say that there probably was, but for whatever reason, it was scrapped.
Yeah, I could easily see that being the case. What other criticisms of the film did you have?
Well, to me, that was really the main one. A couple little story things that I mentioned earlier, and then again, that opening scene that I mentioned as well, with the weird characters. I thought the cadence and the voice, and this is a superficial thing, but I was really kind of questioning the delivery of that main character's lines. It really kind of went all over the place. Like, he didn't really stick with the same type of speaking, and I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but I thought the character's design was really neat, but I did not particularly care for the animation of it. It seemed very cartoonish at times to me. But I thought it was kind of funny. Then all of a sudden they were really tiny. And then, he's just, I couldn't help but think, he's being covered in all of these things. And it made me think of, what was that scene in like Indiana Jones where they're being covered in the like monkeys or whatever. It just, I don't know. It just seemed kind of silly. But, yeah, I mean, my, other than the camera and directing choices and editing choices of this movie, I thought it was a beautiful movie. I thought, the effects were just outstanding. I mean, even just I thought the look and design of that Yorktown port was just really cool, and just a really creative idea. And I loved that whole approach of the Enterprise into that port. I'm calling it a port. I have no idea if it's supposed to be considered a port or whatever it really truly is, but that's what I'm calling it. I thought that whole entrance and docking was just such a cool sequence, and so many nice little details that I think if you were to watch it on your TV screen at home, depending on the size of your screen, I think a lot of it would kind of get lost. And I think there are so many just great expansive moments in this film that would be best seen in the theater.
I agree. I think the port or space station, whatever that is. I think it looks terrific. I also really like the way that they, when the Enterprise leaves there, you get that shot of like kind of the base portion of the ship instead of the saucer section. It's just a view of it that you're not used to seeing.
Oh, that was another thing that I thought was really cool. I don't recall this in the other two Star Trek movies. They may have done this, a shot similar to this before, but I don't recall seeing it. Was at the very beginning, as we're getting the captain's log, and he's giving his log. It's the camera's kind of panning over that saucer portion of the Enterprise, but as it does that, you can see all the little windows, and you can actually tell that there's little people walking around. There's things happening in each of those windows. It was kind of cool. And they did that twice in the movie that I saw, where it kind of pans over the Enterprise, and you can see somebody walking down the hall, or somebody, there's two people talking. And I thought it was kind of cool. It's just showing life within this, and it gives you scale as to how big this is as well, because you can see the little people inside.
Yeah, and I thought kind of to what you're saying, a lot of the visual effects here really worked. I also thought it was funny that the movie opens with one gigantic lens flare. It's just kind of an homage to J.J. Abrams. Just the very opening shot is just one gigantic lens flare.
Yeah,
and they're like, here, take
go.
that.
Yes.
Lens flare, boom.
I loved it.
But yeah, I mean, again, like I would put my biggest criticism on the director itself. I was just not convinced. I think they had a lot of talent around the filmmaker. The cast is really good. The writing was really good. I just not sold on Justin Lin as a director, and I think a lot of the choices that I didn't agree with are choices that fall on him.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think it just sounds a little bit vague and almost like a cop out, but I mean, it's just kind of like he is my all-encompassing criticism of this movie. The shaky cam stuff is, it is a gigantic pain in the ass to watch.
Well, the director is, he's the captain of the crew. I mean, you could either, pin it on him, or would you say it's the director of photography? Would you say it's the cameraman? Would you say it's the editor? But they are all reporting to the director. So ultimately, it's his vision, and they will, carry it out and put in their input and their spin every once in a while. But, if there's a shot that he doesn't like or a move that he doesn't like, he will, do it the way he wants it. So yeah, I do pin it on the director.
And that's one of my things that I always find really interesting when I watch a movie is like what the relationship is between the cinematographer and the director. Mm-hmm. Because there are some directors who are very specific with what they want, and then there are other directors who kind of throw themselves at the mercy of the cinematographer to establish the shot. Like M. Night Shyamalan and all of the different films he's done have always had stunning cinematography, and he works very well with I can't remember. I think it was like Tak Fujimoto was the cinematographer on all of his films. But it's no surprise that the cinematographer on this film is Stephen Windon, who also was the cinematographer on Fast and Furious 7, Fast and Furious 6, Fast 5, Tokyo Drift, all of those movies. So, no surprise, I think. And I think that's why, like you said, some of it, looks like it was born out of some of the same stuff that Fast and Furious was known for.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that style at all. I think it's an interesting combination of taking this, sci-fi movie and giving it, an action movie treatment, but it didn't work for me, and that's okay. And I'm sure there are plenty of people that are huge fans of the Fast and the Furious movies and are also Star Trek fans that probably loved having that combination, but I wasn't a fan, but that's okay.
When did that shaky cam thing really take off? Was it Private Ryan? Because Private Ryan, it's done to incredible success.
Well, Private Ryan and I do not have a good relationship. And I am very disappointed that movie did not win the Oscar that year. because that movie has a first for me. And the fact that I had to get up in the middle of that movie and get sick. I quite literally got sick from that movie because of the shaky cam. Not from the opening scene. The opening scene started it, but it was later on another one of the battle sequences where the shaky cam was happening again, and then, somebody was injured and there were gross sounds and everything together, and I didn't even make it out of the theater. It was horrible. And
Wow.
yeah, it was bad. It was really bad.
So one of some of the first movies that used shaky cam, just kind of some nerd trivia, are some of the John Cassavetes movies. There are also some other movies that came out in the 60s, like The Miracle Worker. I'm not sure why The Miracle Worker used shaky cam at all. The story of Helen Keller, does that require a lot of shaky cam? It was just weird to me.
You're blind, you're a little uneasy.
Doctor Strangelove, The Evil Dead, Blood Simple, Raising Arizona. So I guess it's a technique that's been around. Private Ryan, though, I think might have maybe re-injected some new life. And of course, Blair Witch Project, which I know you love so much.
Yeah, we'll have to have a complete discussion over my hatred of that movie. I hate it on so many levels.
And then
I
Cloverfield,
really
of course.
Well, and don't forget the Bourne movies, too.
Oh, and yeah, everything Paul Greengrass has ever made.
Ugh. I can't watch those movies. I could not see Cloverfield because everybody was warning me, Carrie, you're not going to be able to see it. So I've never seen it, and I hate that I've never seen it because I love the idea of that movie, but I know that it will not end well for me, unfortunately. But there's a lot of movies that to me, it's overdone, and my queasy stomach aside, I don't enjoy it. I know that it's a trend even still in video games. All those first person video game things. It's like constant shaky cam, and I can't play those either. And it's so frustrating to me. But it's not just me. There's a lot of people that don't like it and can't stomach it. And I don't know why people insist on using it. To me, it's excessive. I understand it, again, to be used to show, disorientation or to show stress or, whatever in that moment. But there are times that it's just not necessary, and it is overly overdone.
I totally agree. And I think that's probably the big criticism that both you and I have about this movie. But again, I don't think it takes away from our overall recommendation. This is a really good summer film.
No, as I think all of the other things outside of that really outweigh that. I mean, to me, that is a huge pet peeve of mine, but all the other stuff I thought was so good that it supersedes it. That... I feel a little uneasy right now, but I can't get over, I can't stop gushing about it. I just cannot get over how good the makeups were and how creative and wonderful. And again, just organic looking, just so beautiful. I didn't catch her name, but she was the character who, this is a big spoiler moment. So hopefully if you haven't haven't seen the movie, you're not listening this far, but she's was the captain who kind of lured the Enterprise to go to this star system. There was one of the first shots of her. You see her in profile, and they've used some kind of silicone to create her cowl and headpiece for her because it had this beautiful luminosity, and just the way the light hit it and through it was just gorgeous and breathtaking. And all of the designs on these characters were just, they were so organic, and they just had a beautiful line and fluidity to, the curves around the head and their faces. And, there was a similarity between a lot of the characters, but you could tell they were, each different types of species. But Yeah, just beautifully, beautifully done. And I would watch this movie again just to look at each of these characters a little bit more because I loved it so much for that.
Yeah, and I think that hopefully that's a trend that's going to continue because they're not going to stop with these movies. They're going to keep making them. And this is one that I'm kind of okay with because, like, I'm not super serious into Star Trek as we've talked about, but I do enjoy these movies, so I'll keep going as long as they're good. I was a little bit curious as to their announcement about the fourth movie because I was hoping that it wasn't going to spoil something in the movie itself, but it didn't. It didn't. But the announcement is the main cast for the fourth film. I don't know if you saw the article or not, but
No, I did not.
The main cast for the fourth Star Trek film, or at least the two leads that have been announced for the fourth Star Trek film are Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth.
Oh. Okay.
So Kirk's dad is coming back. I'm very curious to see where they go with that because Chris Hemsworth was in that very cool intro in the first of the Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
Where he plays Captain Kirk's father.
Yeah, and he was referenced in this movie as well. They mention his father quite a bit in this movie. So I don't know, maybe it's a time travel type thing. Another dimension, because they have played with the fact that this movie takes place in another dimension, so maybe they will enter into another dimension or something. Yeah, who knows? That's very interesting. And I remember you saying that you thought there was stuff of this movie that was spoiled for you because you were reading some of the announcements from Comic-Con. So I'm glad that it actually wasn't spoiled for you.
Yeah, I was concerned about it, but it did not. And they also announced the new Star Trek TV show that they're going to be doing. Kind of weird. It's called Star Trek Discovery, so its initials are STD.
I didn't even think about that.
It's a little bit weird.
It is weird.
Enjoy the first season of STD.
You never forget your first.
Popping up this fall.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
So,
oh, boy.
You have that to look forward to, everybody.
It just keeps coming back, doesn't it?
Okay. So now you guys know what we think of Star Trek Beyond, but we want to hear what you think. So hit us up on Facebook and Twitter at NerdFlixChill and let us know your thoughts. Again, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, do all that good stuff, tell your friends, because we are really enjoying kind of doing all these different episodes, and we really appreciate the response we've had so far. I think we've now been listened to in over 30 different countries, which is amazing. So that is something that we always like to talk about, where our listeners are from. So we want to know more about you guys. So hit us up on social media. We have a lot more content coming your way here in the coming days. Lots more that we're going to get out to you. So until next time, live long and prosper, because the night is dark and full of terrors.